Only ever need these two weapons to make sure you complete every single level in Superior. But the problem is they unlock at threat level 3. So here is my superior weapons tier list to make sure you get to threat level 3 and get those two weapons. So let's kick things off with the sticky grenade. Now the sticky grenade is going to go C and the regular grenade is going to go D. The reason the sticky grenade goes to C is you can actually track its location where it's going to explode, and since it's sticky it will stick to the target. Whereas with a normal grenade, the grenade can bounce about. It has more damage than a sticky grenade, but it is kind of unpredictable to see if you actually hit the target, and sometimes you can miss. So out of the two, I'd say the sticky grenade is currently better. Then we move on to the grenade launcher. Now you unlock the grenade launcher at threat level 2, and it is better than both the sticky grenade and the normal grenade because it has a fairly decent clip size, it deals decent damage, and you can combo it with the explosion. Now all of these can go up a tier, especially you have the explosive superpowers where explosions create lava, explosions create ice spikes, and explosions can create lightning. Now we'll get the satchel charge up here because it's more easier to control and you can detonate it at will. It does more damage than all of these combined, and it's one of my favorite weapons so far. It goes to A tier because you can unlock it at threat level 2, and it can pretty much carry you throughout the whole game if you get unlucky and can't get some of the other weapons. Next we have the RPG. Now I hardly use the RPG. It has one clip but deals decent damage, but once you unlock threat level 3 weapons, it kind of falls off unless you're playing a Murmur, because Murmur it has really good usage with explosives and getting damaged by itself to unlock more holograms. But I'm gonna put the RPG in B tier. Next up we have the Auto Pistol. Now the Auto Pistol goes to C tier. Why? Because it's a threat level 3 weapon. It deals minimal damage, it attacks everything automatically, which is basically like a mini Nomad Overdrive, but the clip size is small and the damage isn't there, so I don't think it's worth it. It's only useful if you're feeling like really lazy and you just want to click and then reload and click and then reload and don't worry about completing the map fast. More of a lazy playstyle. Next up we have the Commander Pistol. Now the Commander Pistol is, I have to say, one of the best pistols in the game. It's one of the best threat level 1 weapons you can get in the game. Why? Because it costs 30 credits to buy up front. It has a scope, it deals decent damage, decent clip size, it's got a magazine capacity that does really well, especially if you combo it with the 50% magazine capacity traits, and it's just generally overall a really good starting weapon. Also, if you're playing as a Ronin, you can combo it with Pistol Whip, which if you have the pistol equipped, it gives you 50% more melee damage. Now you can use any of the other pistols as well for the Pistol Whip, but I'd say the Commander Pistol is just a good secondary to have, and you can switch it over to like a turret when you need to. Next we have the Magnum, and I'm going to put this at B because the damage is good, but the firing rate is kind of slow, and it costs, I believe, 45 or 40 credits, so it's not exactly good. If you had the choice between like the Satchel Charge or the Magnum, I'd definitely go with the Satchel Charge. That's why it's in A tier, but it's a decent weapon and it can be useful at certain times. Next up we have the Peacemaker and the normal pistol. These both go to C tier. Why? Because I only use them when I need to, or if there's no other weapon available. They're not like my go-to. I do have them, I do pick them for Ronin with the activate Pistol Whip, but apart from them I hardly ever use these weapons because the Commander's pistol just outshines all of these other pistols. Even though like the Peacemaker is a green rarity weapon, the Commander's pistol is just way better. So if you find this weapon, it's a good way to get to threat level 2 without having to worry about any of the enemies. Next up we have the Energizer. The Energizer goes to B tier. Why? It's like a mini heat vision. Like if you look here, you basically fire a laser like beam of energy that can hit anywhere across the map. The only downside is you can only shoot certain amount of times before it overheats and then does like a mini like semi-automatic firing thing. It is a good weapon, it beats quite a lot of the others, but it's just not strong enough to go to A tier. It can be useful if you combo it well with certain things, but overall it is B tier. Next up we have the Stinger. Now the Stinger goes straight to A tier, the reason being because when you fire the bullets, it has a small magazine capacity of 5, but when you do fire the bullets, they stick to your enemies or stick to the locations, and you can combo it with the explosive superpowers. So right now, explosive superpowers are the way to go. If you manage to combo all 3 of them, the fire, ice, and lightning ones, these can all go upper tier. Main reason being is it just deals so much AoE damage and it's such a reliable weapon that it helps you clear everything faster and it's just so fun to use. Next up we have the plasma pistol. Now the plasma pistol goes to B tier. It's an automatic weapon. It's got a decent clip size, it deals decent damage. It's overall a good weapon to pick if you have no other options. I use it a lot on Ronin, especially for the pistol whip. Now this is something that I haven't seen before. I don't know what weapon this is, so we're just going to place it in B tier for now because I don't think this weapon's in the game yet, or I've never used it. Sweet, now let's move on to the rifles. We have the burst rifle. The burst rifle goes to A tier, especially if you're a nomad player. It can go up to S tier. You unlock the burst rifle at threat level 2. It fires in a bursts of 3. It's a precision weapon, has a really good scope, and is really useful for like the later tier missions like Overmind and anything that requires you to not get hit. Having a burst rifle is one of the best tier 2 weapons, I could say. Main reason being, it's just such a versatile weapon. Like you can use it on any character, especially if you're doing like the growth timeline or the revolt timeline. It's a really good jack of all trades weapon. Next up we have the charge lance. Now the charge lance goes to B. It's one of the best starting weapons that you can get, especially if you're doing the higher tier Earth, where you have to fight wind up at the first boss instead of like backbone. Main reason for this is if you charge this weapon and shoot wind up with a headshot, you can do really good crit damage, and it speeds up the boss fight. I use this all the time if I can. I tend to buy it if I do see it in the store and I have the extra credits, because it pierces the target, it does good damage, and it can speed up quite a lot of boss fights, especially when you're at the low level and you don't have your build going to be as efficient as you want it to do. This weapon can substitute for that. It can go upper tier if you use it straight off the bat, threat level 1, or it is dropped from an enemy, so you save the credits, you just get a really good precision weapon. Next up we have the explosive rifle. Now this goes straight to A tier, because as you can see a pattern here, like in most explosive weapons are A tier, but the reason this is A tier and it can be bumped up to S tier is because it has 2 power-ups that you can use. It benefits from the explosive power-up and it benefits from the precision power-up. And as I said before, with all the other explosive weapons, you can combo it with the superpowers for fire, ice, and lightning. So you can basically just throw this and shoot at the floor, and you can kill a bunch of enemies with the leftover AoE damage from the superpowers. You know, I think this does go up to S tier. This is an S tier weapon, and I do enjoy it, especially if you combo it really well with the explosive superpowers. Next up we have the DMR. Now the DMR is a solid choice. It's B because it has fairly good damage, fairly good crit, has a scope, it's a precision weapon, but it's not as good as the burst rifle. Now if I could, I'd pick up the burst rifle over the DMR, mainly because the burst rifle's burst fire is really effective when dealing with pustules and fireballs and all of those other things. Next up we have the railgun. Now the railgun is B tier. The main reason it's B tier is it's really good at damage, it's got really good range, but its clip size is kind of small, and there are better options available at threat level 3. So it's decent, but there are better alternatives. We have the Kingbird next, and the Kingbird is also B tier. It's like an upgraded version of the DMR. Clip size is good, it's got a scope, it's got decent damage, you can use it fairly well, but at threat level 3 there are just so many better options, so it goes to B tier. Next we move on to shotguns. Now this is the pump action shotgun. You get it at threat level 1. It's such a bad weapon, it goes straight to B tier. I hardly ever use this weapon. I only pick it up if it's dropped by enemies and only as a placeholder. It can be useful, but it's only 2 shots and it doesn't deal as much damage as other weapons and things that you can unlock at threat level 1, and there's better alternatives. Like I would gladly any day take a commander pistol over a pump action shotgun. Next we have the automatic shotguns, so they just go to B tier. They are good, but not as good as some of the other alternatives. Like for example, the auto shotgun's fairly good, and the triple shot is also good, but there are better alternatives during those threat levels. Next we move on to the plasma shotgun. The plasma shotgun goes down a tier because it is useful, but as you can see, you better off pick up a satchel charge than get a plasma shotgun, because it deals way more damage. It has more explosive radius compared to the plasma shotgun. It is decent with the recent changes, but as you can see, there's just better alternatives at threat level 2. Next up we have the sweeper and the thud. Now both of these are decent choices. Shotguns are still underpowered even with the recent changes. There are better weapons that are useful compared to the shotguns, but they're decent choices if you manage to get the superpower pickups, where shotguns still like burn a second, they shock, and then they create chill. So both of them are good, they have decent power. One of them has more pellets than the other, one of them deals more damage, Then the other, I believe it's 40 times 7 and the other one is 18 times 13. That basically means the amount of damage and the amount of pellets fired. So one of them is more like a buckshot and the other one is more like a concentrated shot. Now we move on to the automatic weapons. So we have the mag rifle. The mag rifle is straight up B tier. I never use this weapon. I hate this weapon. I don't get why there's a charged automatic weapon that fires and the recoil is crazy. You shoot and it goes straight up. It's not good. I don't recommend it. Next we have the heavy repeater. The heavy repeater can be useful. It has a really good clip size. It has little damage. But if you combine it with the plus 50% magazine capacity and you have enough money to just buy ammo, this basically can clear any map. The downside is there are better alternatives that come later on. Next we have the plasma rifle. Now the plasma rifle goes to C tier. Why? Because it is an automatic weapon. It does fairly good damage. Clip size is okay, but there are better alternatives at threat level 2. We have the repeater. The repeater is also C tier. Why? Because it has a fairly good clip size, but the damage is horrendous. The startup for the animation can take some time and the recoil can get a little tricky if you don't know how to control it. Overall there are better options, so it goes to C tier. Next up we have the LMG. Now the LMG is A tier, main reason being it's overall solid weapon for threat level 3. It has decent clips, it has decent damage, decent range, and it can be comboed with quite a few things. Overall it's my second option if I cannot pick up the first choice, which will be mentioned later in this video. Next up we have the SMG. Now the SMG is okay, it's Ronin starting weapon. It goes to C tier. Why? Because it's overall decent, but I wouldn't pick it up and I wouldn't buy it. I only use it because it's Ronin starting weapon. Next up we have the Commando SMG. Now this is straight up B tier weapon. It's got decent clip size, decent damage. It's only available to Murmur as the second upgrade, so you can't exactly buy it. You can only get it if a teammate drops it, but overall for a Murmur it's a solid choice. It's only costs you 1 skill point. It can carry you all the way up to threat level 2 and 3 sometimes, depending on your playstyle. Like if you're Chaos, he uses this all the way to like stage 6. And then when he unlocks threat level 3 opens, it's basically GG. This weapon can go upper tier if you know how to use it properly, but for everybody else, this is B tier. Overall solid choice, good pick. Next up we have the Buzzkill. Now the Buzzkill is B tier. Main reason being there are other alternatives that are better. It is SMG, it does decent damage, decent clip speed, good fire rate, but it falls off due to range. And once you hit stage 6 to 9, everything there requires range. So it's good for like clearing small minions, but not overall compared to some of the other choices. Next up we have some of my favorite category, which is turrets. Now the first thing here we have rocket turrets. And rocket turrets is S tier. It is my weapon of choice for my offhand. The rocket turrets have insane range, they deal so much damage, it's AoE, it can be comboed well with the explosive superpowers like explosions create lava, explosions create lightning bolts, and explosions create ice spikes. Now you can see why both the S tier weapons are explosive, because they combo so well with the superpowers and they can be boosted with the explosive power pickups. Next up we have the turret. The turret is C tier. The turret goes up to B tier if you're doing like the revo or growth timelines and you need a tank. But overall it's C tier. Why? Because at the start it can be kind of expensive. It becomes B tier if you get it for free on a drop. It can tank for you and it can distract enemies. So if you use it properly and know how to place the turrets with the recent geometry changes, it can go to B tier at the start. But apart from that, it is a fairly decent choice. The only downside is it costs quite a lot to get when you first start the mission and you don't have a lot of credits to spend to buy the turret. Next up we have the laser turret, and the laser turret is B tier. Main reason, it's got a fairly good range. It's my go-to turret for my threat level 2s. The other option is the shotgun turret. Now shotgun turret goes to B, but if you get the mechanist and you need to kill wind up fast, then the shotgun turret can go up to B rank. But compared to the 2 out of the threat levels, I would say the laser turret is better, mainly for the range and the automatic bonuses. Finally, we have the plasma beam turret, which is basically an upgraded laser turret, and then we have the scatter beam turret, which is basically an upgraded shotgun turret. So they both go in the same categories for basically the same reason. Next, we move on to melee weapons. Now, there are 3 types of melee weapons: slashing, cleaving, and bashing. Currently, due to the way Superior is set up, the slashing is one of the best melee choices, mainly because it gives you a good melee animation and it has a good balance of damage and crit. Cleaving does the most damage, but it gives you a rooted animation which can get you killed sometimes because you are roughly in the same location, whereas the slashing one allows you to move with mobility. And since the main way to unlock cosmetics in Superior is challenge run modes, which is based on kills and speed, you ideally want a good balance of both. and the slashing melee weapons deal that. The bashing melee weapons do give you some decent mobility, but they knock the enemies away, which can make it difficult to finish them off even though you do deal decent damage. So I'm quickly going to sort all of the melee weapons through, keeping in mind that slashing will be a higher tier than the bashing and the cleaving weapons. Let's get to it. We have the mega sword, it's going to go B tier because it's cleave. Then we have the skull basher, that is also B tier. We have the katana, which is B tier. Then we have the cleaving weapons, which are all C tier. We also have this, I believe that is the weighted sword. I believe this is Ronin's starting weapon, so that also goes to B tier because it is a slashing weapon. Then we have all the other cleaving and bashing weapons. I believe this is Murmur's starting weapon. There we go. Now the reason I've did it like this is because these just give you mobility, like I said, and these, if you want damage, you go cleaving. So if you're all about damage, the cleaving weapons can go up a tier, and if you want CC, you go bashing, so the bashing weapons can go up a tier. But as it is for my playstyle, I believe this is the way it goes. Next up, we have the weapon superpowers. Now several of these can be comboed really well and can change tiers depending on your superpower build. But overall, this is what I would rank them if you don't have that much going for you and just based on their general initial skill set. But first up, we have Zap Hands. Now Zap Hands is A tier. Why? Because it's available at threat level 2. It deals good AoE damage. It can trigger lots of on-hit effects with the shocking skill tree. It has a decent clip size, it recharges fast, and it deals good AoE damage. So overall, solid pick if you want a weapon superpower. Next up, we have Heat Vision, and the Heat Vision is my go-to weapon choice for this game. Heat Vision has the best damage in the game. It has a sniper rifle like range, so as long as you can see it on the map, you can deal damage to it. It has a decent clip size, it recharges really fast, it has really good damage over time effects, and it can combo well with several other things. So it is my number one pick, and you only really ever need the Heat Vision as your first slot and the rocket turret as the second slot to make sure you complete every single level in Superior. Next up, we have Death Disc. Now Death Disc is B tier, but if you combo it well with the superpower trees, you can go up to A tier because it can clear the whole map if you get the whole Force superpower and the Force explosion skill tree set. Now we have Magma Ball. I'm going to put this C tier. I don't really use it as much, main reason being I rather get Zap Hands than the Magma. But if you have the explosive setup, it could be useful. The only downside is you have to charge it, and it is a arc, it's not a straight shooting superpower. That's where the Avalanche comes in. It's basically a better version of the Magma Ball because you can aim it and it goes exactly to where your mouse is. You can combo it well with the explosive superpowers, and you can combo it well with extra damage kits as well as the whole ice tree. Next up, we have Shocking Vision. Shocking Vision is D tier. It is basically a shitter version of Heat Vision. It deals less damage, has less clip speed, reloads slower than all of the superpowers. It is basically a shit version of Heat Vision. If you had to pick the option between the two, you always go Heat Vision. The only thing that Shocking Vision goes for is that it can stun and shock enemies, but you don't need that at threat level 3. What you need is pure damage, and that's where Heat Vision comes in. Next up, we have Ice Hands, and Ice Hands is also C tier. Main reason being, it can be useful. Like if you're a Murmur, then you can use Ice Hands, but apart from that, I hardly ever use it as a Ronin or a Nomad, because Nomads basically shoot all the time, and that's where Heat Vision comes in. You want it at range, you don't want it close. And then Ronin, you're basically dealing melee damage, and if you do have Heat Vision and Rocket Turret, you don't need anything else. So that was the Superior weapon tier list. Hopefully it's helpful for you guys to know which weapons are good, which weapons are bad in the game, especially if you just started and you need to figure out which weapons you should be using and which weapons aren't exactly good or worth the credits. As always, don't forget to hit that like button, smash the subscribe button, and turn on that notification bell because it's free and it's the easiest way to support me as a content creator. Stay tuned for more Gala Games videos.